Hey everybody, Chris here from It's Mead Made. Got a question for you. Have you ever had a print where the seam line just stuck out like a sore thumb? Or your supports might have shown up in all the wrong places? Well, today is going to be a game changer for you then. In this video, I'm going to show you how I take complete control in Orca Slicer to use two powerful tools, the seam painting tool and the support painting tool. First, we'll tackle seams, so you can hide them exactly where you want them. And then we'll jump into supports, so you can place those supports in the places you actually need them. So, let's not waste any more time and jump into Orca Slicer. Alright, so we are in Orca Slicer, and I found this cute little xenomorph from Aliens, and I thought this would be a really good example of seams, because there's some really unique things on here that'll help us just learn the tool. Now, if you're not familiar with what a seam is, let me just jump over to the sliced file here. Now, if you see these little white lines all over the model, this is exactly where the layer stops and moves up, or where this layer starts. So if we scrub through our layer preview here, we can see that the little white dot is where our layer ends, and it lifts up and moves to the next area. And the next area being the infill, or it could be moving to the next area with the tail. So that is really the big thing, is when there is a layer change, that is where your seam is. So it's either the start or stop point, which is usually the same spot because it's got to make a full rotation. So when you're doing that, you're going to inherently see all of these little lines sometimes, depending on the 3D model. Especially when you have very smooth things like this. You can see all of these little lines right here, and this is what it's going to look like if it's 3D printed. So let's go ahead and go back to our Prepare tab up here, and let's just talk about how we can get rid of these. Now, this is something that we can't just like completely say, I don't want any seams, so please just not have them. Because that actually gets rid of the whole point of 3D printing. It prints layer by layer, so inherently there has to be a start and stop point. So the point of this is we need to be able to control where our seams go. Because if we come back here and I scroll all the way up, these are all over the place. So you see all of these little white spots, and especially on the tail, it kind of curves around, it comes over here. And in the back, there's some right there. But when we're looking at the face, like it's going to go right up the side. Sometimes you don't see the seam very well. Sometimes you can see it like a sore thumb. So that is the big thing. We need to control where these are going to go. Now, a general rule of thumb when it comes to how you place your seams is you want them in an area that is not going to be visible, typically. So if you have something like this, and I am always going to be like setting it on a shelf, like facing me, I'm not going to see this all the time. Or I might be putting it on my shelf at just a slight angle, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that looks nice. So I'll have that on my shelf like this, which means this angle I'm not going to see. So we need to kind of think about how this is going to be displayed. So if you have like a bust, you always want the seam in the very back, or you want to hide it along the model, and I'll get into that. The big thing here is when you come over to your quality settings over here in your sidebar, you come down here to seam. Now, aligned is where the default, and this is just wherever it lands and what it makes sense, like it just does it. Now, what we can do is we can also change this. So I could say random. I want this always in a random spot. And if we slice this, then we can see all of these little dots everywhere. Now, you have to be careful about random because this can also cause a little blobs and zits all over your models. So I really do not recommend using random. The only time that I've used random is where I have a model that I'm printing that has a super, super rough texture, and there is no way you're going to be able to see that. But even then, not using random works just fine too. Now, the one that I like the most is back. Back is the one that you can easily place everything just how you want it. And it looks at your position.
Now, realizing this is, if I click on my front right here, realizing right here, this is the front of my build plate. This is the back of my build plate. So when I say back, this is what it means. So let's go ahead and click on the front view of this model here. And I'm going to go to the front, and we're going to slice this. So if you see, we don't see any seams here whatsoever. Now, let's go ahead and go to the back. Now we see all of the seams here. And that's basically what back does. It just moves the seams all the way to the back. It still determines what is the best spot for it when it comes to 3D printing, not what is the most visual best spot. So this is still the thing that we're going to have to fix. So if you're printing something simple like a planter or something like that, you can easily just align it in a certain way and just say back, and then it will print it on the back side of it to where you're not going to see that side. But the thing is, sometimes we need to be able to control where we have the seam because there's certain areas that are just well hidden and nobody would ever notice if they're there. And that is exactly where the seam painting tool comes into play. So let's go ahead and click our model and come up here and click on our seam painting tool now that we have a good understanding of what this does. Now, this is basically going to be printing the seam exactly where we paint it. Now, this is the thing here. Just because I do this, I am going to paint a line, and there we go. This is where I want my seam. I'm going to go ahead and slice this. Now, this is where I want you to understand, when you do a seam painting tool, it is not an absolute. Just because you paint it there does not mean the slicer is going to allow you to have a seam there. Sometimes where the seam has to go is really unavoidable. Just for the way that it is building the layers, it's going to put it somewhere else. And this is really all about you saying, okay, slicer, I would really appreciate it if you could please put the seam in this area. And honestly, as crazy as that sounds, that's the closest description of what the seam painting tool is, because it doesn't always put it exactly where you want it. Because look at this. We did a nice smooth line right here, but see how it just jumped over here? Because it just made sense for it to do it right there instead. So it did. And that is the big thing I definitely want you to understand, because you might be painting something and you're like, wait a second, I need that right there. And it doesn't do it. That is why. Because it's more of a suggestion than a demand. Think about it that way. So let's go back into our seam painting tool. And let's just go over some of these tools. Now, obviously, you just saw me draw this line. So I'm going to erase my painting. And what you're doing is you are just clicking and drawing a line, and this is where the seam is going to be created, or where you want the seam to be created, should I say. And that's the big thing here. And you really want to find areas that just make sense to be able to hide it. So if I erase this right here, I would really love it if I could just draw this all the way down the back of the tail. So let's focus on the tail right now. So I'm going to click on my back view, and I want to draw this straight down in a nice straight line. But with a mouse, I am not that great at doing that. So I'm going to hit Erase Painting tool, or All Painting. Then there is this nice little button right here, Vertical. So let's go ahead and check that. Now I am going to click and drag, and look, I'm actually moving from left to right, and you see how it's still going straight down. Now, that is the beauty of vertical. So I got a perfect vertical line, and that is really where I want the seam of this. So I can uncheck vertical, and now I can do whatever I want. But we're going to undo that. Now let's go ahead and slice this so we can see exactly what happened. So there we go. Now, instead of it wrapping in different areas, it is going directly up and down right there. So, here's the other thing. Let me show you this. So if I decide to rotate this, say 180 degrees, and let's go ahead and slice it. Now, you can see my tail is perfect. But I didn't tell where everything else should go. Now this is facing the back, and my seam is going directly across the face of this. So this is the important thing I want you to understand. Seam, when you're over here in the sidebar, when you select back or nearest, aligned, or random, it is going to go default to that. So if you don't tell it exactly where you want all of the seams, you are going to go to the default of what you have selected over here. That's why I always suggest rotating your model in a certain way to where if any seams happen to fall, then they're going to be in the area I want them in and not on the face. So now when we slice it again, we can see that right here, they're all on the back again, and we have that perfect line going down the tail. So let's go ahead back to my prepare. I'm going to select my little xenomorph and click on my seam painting again. Now, we have seen how to be able to just left click and drag, and we can create these seams. But sometimes we're going to have a seam in an area we don't want it. So this is really where we're going to say, okay, I do not want any seams in this area right here. So what we can do is tell the slicer, okay, you need to avoid these areas. You can really put it wherever you want, just avoid this area. And what that is if you use your right mouse button and click and drag, this is going to create a red zone. And that means I don't want anything painted right here. But you can also come down and I can left click and drag and go up and be like, this is where I want it painted. So you can tell it of like, okay, I want them right here, but I don't want them right here. And that is just right click and left click. So now if we go ahead and slice this, we can see that there are no seams on the top here, but they're all underneath on the bottom right here. And it did right in the areas that I asked it to. So now, if we come back to our seam painting tool, so another thing to understand is our brush shape. First we have a circle, and that's what we've been painting with all along is this brush circle. Then we have a sphere. Now I like using the sphere because it will go along the contours of your model. So if you see here, it kind of goes in the cracks really easily. Here's a better way for me to explain it to you. Let's look at our toes right here. Now, if I grab this and say, okay, I want my seam to be anywhere here. Now, if I look over here, it kind of cuts it off and that's where it goes. And it doesn't really wrap it around the toe. But if I use my sphere, and let's go around this one, and I'm going to go straight up, I'm going to go around, and then I'm going to go to the very top. So you can see how it kind of wraps around, even though we did not wrap around. And that really helps when you're going around contours and things like that. It will instantly just kind of go around those areas for you. And sometimes that is very helpful, especially when you're dealing with a lot of ridges, like say like this over here. You can use that. So that is one thing that is really nice, and sometimes people really prefer the sphere over just the circle. But when it comes to the seams, I honestly, it doesn't matter to me. I like the sphere a lot for certain areas, but for the most part I use the circle just for the seam painting shape. Now, then we have our brush size, and this is kind of obvious, but I'm going to show this. You have a brush size and you can increase it. So there is me painting my seam area, and then I can decrease it, and here is the other seam area I want. So this is really just giving control. And the big thing about this is when I have it very fine, I'm telling the slicer, please, just in this area, and I only want it along this line. When I'm doing it on a bigger brush size, I'm basically telling the slicer, okay, I don't really care where this goes as long as it's in this main area right here. So you're giving the slicer more of a choice, and the bigger the brush size, the more of an instance you'll have where it stays in that area for you. So now let's talk about our section view. Now our section view, I would say, is one of the biggest tools that people get the most confused by, because I can be like this and I'm sliding it and it's like, oh, well, crap. Well, I want it to be over here. And what do I do? And or what is the point of this? I know I've gotten that a lot. And the section view is honestly, it's one of my favorite things in Orca Slicer when it comes to any of our brush tools, because it allows us to get in areas that we can't easily get to. So let me just come all the way back here, and let's say that I really want to create a line all the way down right in the middle here. So if it's not on one of these spines right here, I want it to be on right down the spine of this. So here, let me increase this. I'm going to just say, please come down here and please come down here. There we go. Now, what we can do is we can use our section view to chop off parts of our viewing. So imagine that our camera is over here and we're looking, and it's going to slice it along the plane of our camera. It's basically just pushing like this view through it. So if I'm looking this way and I am going to move my section view, all I have to do is hit reset direction. And now I'm looking directly at it, and now I can slice it away that way. And to even help better understand this, let me rotate over here. If you look on your bottom left, I'm going to click on my left view, and then I am going to go to my section view and reset direction. Now I'm going perfectly from the side. So if you see that, I am slicing it in half. So let me go now to the back. I'm going to go to the back view, and I'm going to reset direction. And now I am able to go all the way back here, and boom, there we go. I can get rid of the tail. Do you see that? You see how nice that is? So now we can draw where we're wanting to draw. Now, if I go to my brush again, I'm going to increase my size just a bit, and I am going to hit vertical this time. So I'm going to go to my back view, I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag all the way down. And there we go. Now, this is the important thing to understand. So let me just show you with this. I'm going to click right here. Oh, let me turn off vertical, and I'm going to click around here. Okay, now I'm going to turn off my section view. Look what it did. You can't paint in the areas where section view is on. So all of this just kind of sliced it all off. So I can just hold Shift and left click, and that is going to be my erase. So that is the first little command that is very useful, is Shift, left click, and that is erase. So I can click and be like, oops, accidentally, hold Shift down, and that will erase it for us. And there we go. So now I want to turn on my vertical again. I'm going to kind of line it up, click, and just drag all the way up here. And I'm going to have to get rid of this tail. So let me just hit reset direction. And I'm going to pull this back a bit. There we go. And I can get in that area to be able to go all the way to the top. And there we go. So I want to actually cut it off there. So I want to say, please don't paint right here. And there we go. Or I can go right down the middle. So there we go. So you can see how powerful this reset direction can be using section view. So we've learned all of this, and the last couple things when it really comes to setting your seam, let's talk about my favorite commands when doing this. So we've obviously already learned our left click is green, our right click is red, and Shift left click is erase. So that is how we're going to erase things. Now, if we hit Control and our scroll wheel on our mouse, we go up and down, that is going to control our brush size. So we can easily scroll and make our brush size bigger and smaller. Then, when it comes to our section view, you can see this. If we hold Alt and scroll, that is going to allow us to scroll through our section view. And those are all of the best commands when it comes to our seam painting tool. So if we slice this now, we can see that we have really nothing on the front here. And on the back, it's going along the back of the tail and the spine. And when it has to, it's going along these little spines as well. So that pretty much sums up the whole seam painting tool and should help you understand seams a whole lot better.
Now that you've seen how much control you can have over your seams, let's take the same powerful tool and apply it to our supports. And speaking of control, that's exactly what we work on inside the 3D Print Guild, giving you the skills and techniques to get the results you actually want from your printer. The Guild is where I teach in-depth courses, we do live calls, and I help you troubleshoot so you can print with confidence. Now, the doors to the Guild aren't open right now, but if you want to join next time, they're open. Be sure to join the waitlist. I'll go ahead and drop a link below to where you can join the waitlist now. That being said, let's go ahead and jump into our support painting tool.
Alright, so now let's talk about the seam painting tool. And I brought in my little nerd here because I think this is just a really good example, and I love this guy. So we're going to go ahead and scale this up. I want to get this a little bigger for us to really see where those areas are. So the thing here is we need to identify where our overhangs and islands are. And the first thing to do that is being able to see where they're at. Because if we look at this right here, we're like, I don't know. And the unfortunate part is you can't see these by default. You know, older slicers would have these by default, but the newer ones do not for some reason. And what we can do is we can enable it. So let's go ahead and click on the hamburger icon here on the very top left corner. Then we're going to go to View, and then come all the way down here and click on Show Overhangs. Now, once we've clicked on that, all we have to do is rotate underneath the model. And look at that. If you see those red areas, that means we need to have supports on them because these are either islands or overhangs. And let's go ahead and just slice this for a second and see what this looks like. So this is instantly adding in supports right here underneath the nose and like underneath the model where the legs attach to and the belly. So what we can do is first, let's go ahead and turn these off so we can see. So let's go ahead and slice this without supports to see what it could look like without supports. And we can really see where our overhang walls are. And those are in blue. So if you see here, this in blue is our overhangs, and right here underneath is an overhang. And if we really look, the very bottom isn't an overhang, it is an island. So when we're dealing with supports, we're supporting two different types. It's either an overhang or an island. So down here at the bottom of the belly, that is an island. And up here at the nose, it is an overhang. And an overhang, it's exactly what it sounds like. See how it comes out and it overhangs and it's printing partly into the air and partly onto the model. And the thing is when it is printing at a certain extent, it's going to need some type of support because gravity is going to win this battle, and you're going to get some real drooping and sagging here. So now that we can see this, let's go ahead and first let's go into our Prepare tab and click on our object and click on this support painting. Now, when we're looking here, we can see, okay, here is our model, and we can go ahead and paint where we think we need supports. Now, just like the seam painting tool, we have a circle and a sphere tool, and they work the exact same way as seam painting does. Then we have something different. We have fill. So we can actually click fill and make this whole thing supported. Now this is more useful when you have multiple objects that are separate in your 3D print. And you can just select which one you want for it to be supported. But I do not recommend using it like this, because if we slice this, it's going to try to add supports on everything if we add supports here. So let's go ahead and slice that with supports. Now you can see it is literally trying to add supports all over this model, and it does not need that many supports. So I definitely do not recommend you doing that. Now, if we go ahead and look back on our support painting, we can right-click or left-click. Now, left-click is the exact same as the seam painting tool, and right-click is the exact same as well. It will make it red and saying we do not want any supports here. Now, shift left-click is erase. So if you ever need to figure out, okay, how do I erase this? I can just do shift left-click. And that is the same for our circle tool and our sphere tool. So left click is green where we want supports. Right click is no supports. Now, some of you might be familiar with the term support blockers, and that is what we are using here. A support blocker is an area where we do not want to have supports where it's giving supports. So right now we are using normal auto. I want to use tree auto. And let's go ahead and erase all of our painting and slice this. Now this is automatically going to add supports in the areas that we saw in red. So if we look here, we can switch to line type, and now we can see, okay, it's adding supports here and it's adding supports up underneath as well. Now, the thing here is, when I'm looking at this, I'm like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to need supports this far out, because it's supporting it past where the blue is. So I can use my tool here, go to my support painting, and I can go around this, and I am going to right-click and drag all the way around here. And I'm just thinking, I don't need this many supports. It's just over supporting it. And I'm just going to really need it, honestly, I would say about right here. And now I can go ahead and slice my model and then go to my line type, and you can see it is literally just supporting it right there and nowhere else. Now, I might think, okay, that is going to be perfect, but maybe you wanted to add just a little bit more. And what I like to do is I like to select my model, do this, but then what I'll do is I will left-click lines. So I will do here, here, and here. And that's one of the things that I like to do. That way I'm not over-supporting it, but it is getting some support, just not the entire thing. And that will definitely help with my print. So there we go. It's not over supported, but it is supported in the areas that I think it needs to be, and it's good to go there. So let's go back to our nerd here and go to our support painting tool. And another great thing is we can click on overhangs only. So when we click on overhangs only, we can go ahead and I can just go to town on this and select all I wanted, but it's only going to let me paint on those overhangs. So you can add that if you want, and then you can turn that off, and then you could paint beyond that if you wanted as well. So this is a really good way to just get that coverage where you want it, but also on the other side of that, I could be erasing this. So I hold Shift, and I am clicking and dragging, and that is erasing. So if you've noticed, these tools work the exact same across the different tools. So if that even makes sense. But they're all the sphere tool. It's all the circle tool, which means the commands that I was explaining for the seam tool are the exact same here. So if I hold Control with my scroll wheel, I can move my size up or I can move my size down. And that will work for me adding supports or adding a support blocker of saying, I don't want any supports here. And then Shift left click is erase as well. And then we're looking at all of our highlight overhangs. We can highlight more overhangs if we wanted to. So I can bring this even further and say, you know what, I need to highlight even more. So I can increase this when it comes to my overhang angle or my threshold angle. And it will even tell me, okay, I am right now, my threshold angle is at 30, but maybe I want to increase that a little further. And then that'll allow me to paint on some of these areas if I wanted to. So this is just kind of a nice little thing to be able to really increase this to say, okay, where do I really need to focus on? And it's like, you know what? I think I need to only focus on some of these areas, and you can bring that down as well. So it's really just going by the default of whatever your threshold angle is. And when we're coming to section view, I'm not going to go over that again because it's the exact same here too. So if I go to my side view here, you can see if I reset my direction, this is the exact same thing. So that includes if I hold Alt and I scroll my wheel here, that is also going to do the exact same thing too. So Alt scroll wheel will go through that, and I can even hit reset and do the same thing. And lastly, if you ever want to erase everything and start over, you can do that there. But when it comes to this, I like to just kind of give a nice stripe down the middle, and that's really all I would be doing. And then I can slice that. Now, here's the other thing that I think is important to understand. If you see here, let's go back, and I am going to go here, and I made this strip right down the middle. Actually, I want to erase this first, and I am going to hold my control and scroll mouse down, and then I am going to click and drag a line right here. And then I'm going to draw one here and here. And that's it. But so this is where I'm saying, okay, hey, I need supports right there. And that's it. So if I slice this, look what it does. It's adding it everywhere. And it's not adding it just where I wanted it to be. Like, it's putting it all over this entire model. So if I look here, this is all one big support. So what you need to do, if you really truly want to only have it do supports where you're marking, you need to come over here to your supports, under the support tab, go to type. Instead of tree auto, you want to do tree manual. Tree manual is only going to put supports where you paint them. So this is a very important thing. If you are not comfortable with supporting everything exactly how it needs to be, do not use this. Because this is the more advanced of like, I want to have 100% control. So if you see here, now it's only in the areas I painted. It's not as wide anymore. And if we come all the way up here, we can see how it is in those areas as well. So it's actually less than was originally there. So important thing to understand is if you want to control it, you want to switch this to manual. But if you want to just add to what it's already creating, then leave it here at normal auto. So the normal tree or normal, like those are the two you want to leave it auto, but manual, it's going to only put it in those places. And that's pretty much it. So when it comes to both of these tools, once you know one of them, when it comes to the tools, you pretty much know the other one as well. So I strongly encourage you to start playing around with all of these, with your support blocker, with your adding supports, and your seam to be able to get these all in the right spot and have more control over your 3D prints, which will definitely make your stuff look a lot better.